battlefield of the world, the Siachen Glacier, and the Kupwara district on the line of control. He has also played his role in Operation Parakram that took place in 2002 in JNK. Sir has commanded a field artillery regiment deployed in counter-infiltration role at Tangdahar, JNK. He was also the commanding officer of 1 Delhi Girls Battalion NCC from July 2016 to July 2018. As the commanding officer of the Girls Battalion, he has trained the Delhi Directorate Girls Thal Sainik Camp team, which won 17 medals and achieved 8th position overall in the TSC. He served as the Deputy Group Commander at Group Headquarters, Bhalpur in Bihar before he retired on 31st of last month. Of course, he didn't stop there. Sir is said to have formed an ardent desire to contribute for the cause of rural development, farmer welfare, and sustainable growth through the observations that he made about the adverse impacts of unregulated growth of natural resources during his army service. Right now, Sir has taken up full-time farming and plans to establish an integrated, regenerative, chemical-free farm which will act as a model for alternative farming. He is also said to be channelizing his energy towards rural development, social service, and other social welfare activities. The more I say, the less it would be about him. So I'm absolutely honored and privileged to be given this opportunity to welcome the man of valor and values, Colonel Soumendra Pandey. We extend our warm welcome to you, sir. And you are requested to enlighten our cadets on military leadership skills and its relevance to us. Now the dais is all yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope everyone can see the screen that I'm showing, because I'm not able to see it now. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The first slide is there, which gives you the topic of the day. That is, we are here today to discuss why. Why should we be giving military kind of leadership training to the youth? When most of you people may not be joining the military as such. So you will see the reasons as we go through the presentation. Before I go on to the presentation proper, I want all of you to have a nice look at this picture. In this image on the right and top corner is Lance Nayak Sandeep Singh. He was a soldier of 4 Para SF. He had taken part in the famous surgical strikes in September 2016. And in 2018, while fighting the terrorists in Kupwara, Tangdhar, he laid down his life and he was awarded Shaurya Chakra. That's a very brave story of this man. However, what I want you to focus on is the picture on the left, where you see 3 full colonels standing in front, and with one of the gentlemen, the Sikh gentleman, holding Lance Nayak Sandeep Singh's son in his arms. This picture tells a lot to us about the kind of leadership that the military commander needs to provide to his man. We will get back to this image later on during this talk. I shall be covering my talk under the following heads. Every leadership is applied and needs to be effective in a particular context. So it's important to understand as to what is the role of armed forces as far as the whole nation is concerned. Then I will talk about the purpose of NCC and why should we be giving the NCC or military type training to NCC cadets. We shall see the special military situations in which the leadership needs to be effective, which are very, very unique, which are very, very different from any other kind of situation. There is leadership in every field. There's leadership in the educational leadership. Your principal is performing the task of an educational institution's leader. There are business leaders, Ratan Tata, Ambani, they are all leaders in their own right. Mr. Anand Mahindra of the Mahindra & Mahindra is a business leader of his own company. And there are different types of leadership skills required for different situations. So what's so special about military situation, and what should be the unique requirement of military leadership to be applied to those military situations, and what should be the skills and qualities to meet that requirement is what we are going to cover today. So our nation has got these pillars of national power. First and foremost is our parliament, the polity, our elected representatives who represent the entire 1.3 crore humanity of this nation. Then comes our economy, the judiciary, the fifth estate, the media. All these are very, very important pillars of our national power, and they show how strong our nation is. The more strong is our democracy, the stronger will our nation be. But military has also got its own position. It has been shown at the fifth position because it does not have any direct decision role in the decision making of a democracy. You change this and you will have problems. I've heard many people say that the army should take over, we should have dictatorship, everything will be all right. We are wrong if we say that. And to know that, we don't have to go very far. You just look at our West, what's happened in Pakistan, where army has been given greater role than it should be given. However, army's role is very, very important, because if the army is strong, then all the others will be able to carry out their functions without interference from external threats or internal disturbances. So army represents the fist of the nation, and it should be applied as such to all the belligerent forces. Army should be used to set them right. These are the external challenges which the nation faces, and it's the army's task to give you protection from them. We've got neighbors who are not very happy with us most of the times. Then we've got internal disturbances in terms of terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir and Northeast. And we also have now left-wing extremism spreading its tentacles in our entire nation. So from these challenges flows the role of the Indian Army. And the primary role of the army is to preserve national interest and safeguard the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and unity of India against any external threats. So a primary role is towards the boundaries, the borders. And we do this by two methods. Firstly is by deterrence, or lastly, if required, by waging war. This word deterrence is very important. I'll come to it in the next slide. Our secondary role is to defend the nation against internal threats and provide aid to civil authorities whenever requisitioned. And let me highlight that the army is not very happy getting involved in internal security duties. We, in the armed forces, do not like to be used against our own people. And another point I wish to highlight is that whenever army is called out in aid to civil authorities, it is a kind of admission. It's a kind of acceptance by the civil government, civil administration, that everything has failed and they have failed. Only then there is a need to call in army, which I can assure you, the army will never fail, and it has never failed you. So it is considered the instrument of last resort. Many have seen such a person standing outside nightclubs, and if you've been going to these places, I know most of you know them. They are bouncers. What is their task? What is the role of the bouncer? Bouncer does nothing. Bouncer just stands there and flexes his muscle so that people who have come for entertainment, they can enjoy themselves without any interference from the people who are trying to create disturbance and trying to disturb their happiness. So this is a kind of deterrence that they are providing by just flexing their muscles. Similarly, the army also provides this same kind of sense of security to the nation, so that all political, economic, and cultural activities can take place without any interference from any external disturbances or internal disturbances. People having the wrong eye on our nation, they are taken care of by the armed forces, so that the cultural activities, the social activities can go on without interference, and economic activities can go on without any interference. Now coming to NCC and the purpose of NCC. We have about 2,000 officers and 20,000 men of uniform on deputation with the NCC at any point of time. You also know that there is already a shortage of many as 10,000 officers and about 1 lakh soldiers, as per the latest figures tabled in the parliament last month. Then why officers and men from the combat duties for leadership development amongst the youth? We already have shortage of officers, and then we take out 2,000 officers and about 20,000 men to come and be with the young future leaders of the nation. There has to be something very, very important which is being done by these people to take out armed, uniformed people from their basic tasks, from their combat duties. I've been thinking on this question a lot ever since I came to NCC. And then I realized that if there is one institution in this country which is truly secular, largely apolitical, and which is depended upon by the nation in very, very extreme circumstances, and which always, always, always delivers to the nation, is the armed forces. Be it external threat or internal disturbance, be it floods or be it an earthquake, it's the army which is called out when everything else fails. So there is something very special and unique in the way armed forces does things, which allows them not to fail. And to my mind, our political leaders, whoever took the decision to have NCC, they have thought and they hope to transfer some of those work ethics, work culture, which is there in the military, to the youth of the country, to the future leaders of the country, because those qualities, those leadership qualities will come in handy in whatever field they go to be able to perform against all odds. The military skills, military leadership skills, and the work ethics have stood the test of times. They have been going on for so many years, and they are designed to succeed against all odds. And with personal experience, I can tell you that these qualities will ensure that you never, 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 never give up. When we had joined the academy, we were told, there was a huge poster kind of thing in my own squadron in NDA, which said that there are no runners-up in war. We have been trained to win. We do not have any choice. There is no second position when there is a war. There's only one victor and the other one is vanquished. And we do not want to be on the side of the vanquished. We are also told that we do immediately and impossible may take a little time. So in our dictionary, there is nothing called impossible. I have seen it. You ask a Sikh Jawan कि ये काम करना है, and he will always say हो जाऊगा साहब. He will never say, he will find a way to do it with whatever resources he has, and he will achieve whatever task is given to him. So we have not learned to say no, as long as it's not something which you're asking me, which is beyond the need and requirement. The dynamics of leadership. See, any leadership has got three factors for it to be effective, for it to be applied. First and foremost is the leader himself, but a leader is useless without his team. And then the leader and the team have to perform their task in a situation. I'm not going into the definition of leadership. Most of you know what you must have read in various places, what is various definitions given by various people of leadership. In short, you can understand leadership is about getting things done. So when you have to get things done, it has to be done in a particular environment, in a particular situation. And that situation will also dictate your leadership style. Your team and its abilities, its limitations and capabilities will also decide your leadership style. And the leader must know himself what are his own capabilities and limitations. He should be very, very self-aware to be able to become an effective leader. So we must understand what are the military situations in which this leadership, military leadership, has to be applicable. All of you can see the slide. There's a picture. Can I have somebody telling me, confirming to me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, this picture is showing an ice wall in the Siachen Glacier where you see some soldiers climbing up the ice wall. In the Siachen Battle School, every soldier being inducted in the Siachen is taught how to climb ice walls. You see, these are, you will not be able to imagine the cold weather over there. The temperatures must be minus 30, minus 40 degrees centigrade. And the oxygen level will be 30 to 40% less than what we get to breathe over here in Delhi and in Patna, where I'm sitting right now. So I want all of you to imagine that if you are the leader of these people who need to perform their tasks to their extreme limits of their physical and mental stamina and strength, what is the kind of quality which will be required from you? How will you tell this man to go climb up this wall, which will test his entire physical strength and stamina? What quality should you have to be able to give that kind of an order? In another picture, you see people climbing up. Again, terrain is similar. These are all icy mountains. And mind you, after reaching this top, their task does not get over. They may be required to, if there is an attack going on, they may be required to dash ahead and maybe run up to an enemy bunker, which may be already firing bullets at them. This is a picture of the Kargil area where the terrain is so rough, it's very, very difficult to walk on your legs. You may at times have to put your hands to support yourself to climb up. And imagine you have to climb up, go up to 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 feet, and then move ahead where there's hardly space for one man to move ahead and close in with the enemy bunker, which is firing bullets at you, and then attack. In the army, when we go in for such an attack, there is a ratio that we work out. When we are attacking a small section post, then we go with 30 to 40 of 30 people. Then we attack that section post with a platoon. A section is 10 people. A section post will be attacked with a minimum of 30 people. That is a platoon strength. So for a defender at the ratio of 1, you will be, attacker has to be of 3. What does it mean? What does it imply? It implies that we have already considered that most probably only 1 out of 3 people will be reaching that bunker alive. So military leadership has to push his men in such extreme circumstances. From minus 50 degrees centigrade, the soldier may get posted to Rajasthan where the temperatures will be plus 50 degrees centigrade. This is an image of 71 war in the western sector of Rajasthan. or he may find himself in the dense jungles of Northeast thereafter. This man may also be required to kill human beings. That's the task of a leader. You need to lead such people who are required to kill people. And maybe at times they may be required to lay down their lives in the line of duty. It is a very, very possible and probable reality that the army officers and military leaders, they have to face. And let me tell you, it is a very, very emotionally draining experience to be holding the dead body of your own man in your own hands. So this is the unique requirement of military leadership, which no other leader needs to perform, is to motivate his command to be prepared to make the supreme sacrifice, that is to give his life, if required, in the line of duty. Tell me any other leader which will have this kind of a task. So what quality will you want in your leader if you were that man? To be able to trust your life in his hands. What qualities must the leader possess to generate such faith in his team that they are ready to give on his words of command? And again, I want to highlight over here the term words, because as a military leader, you do not have anything else except your words and your personality to be able to motivate him. You cannot increase his pay. He gets his money from the pay and accounts office directly into his bank. There's no other incentive that you can give him, but you have to still motivate him to give his life if required. Mostly we say that we should not be giving our life for our country. We should make the enemy lay down his life for his country. But that's good to say. But the fact remains that we may have to also lay down our lives. So what are the qualities? Can anybody think about it? And tell me at least one or two.
Sir, may I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir,
Tell your name.
I
What's your
think,
name?
sir, my name is Cadet Vaibhav Gupta.
Raghav. Thank you, Raghav. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, Vaibhav.
Vaibhav. Yes, Vaibhav.
Sir, I think there should be two qualities that the troops should respect their leader, and they should trust the leader. If they don't respect him, they won't follow his leadership, and if they don't trust him, then also they won't follow his leadership.
Excellent. Trust is the word that I will focus on. Respect, you will have to do something. I want people to say what are the qualities which should be there in you to get that respect and that trust. तुम्हारे अंदर क्या खूबी होनी चाहिए, क्यों मैं तुम्हें ट्रस्ट करूं, क्यों मैं तुम्हें तुम्हारे वर्ड्स ऑफ कमांड पे अपनी जान दे दूं? तुम्हारे अंदर कुछ तो होना चाहिए अलग कि मैं तुम पर इतना भरोसा करूं.
Sir?
You
sir, am I audible?
Should have some give my life for you on your words of command. Does this ring a bell? Integrity? Will you like to follow a person whom you know is a thief or who says something and does something else? So the first, to my mind, the first and the most important quality in a military leader is integrity. And that is why the entire nation has so much faith on army people, that if this army officer is there, then things will not be going wrong, because he will say what he does, and what he does is what he will say. It's a very, very important quality. I have seen this, the effect of this when I was commanding my unit. So I'll say that absolute and uncompromising integrity is one of the most important qualities of a military leader. You may have any other weakness, but this, if it is lacking, then I'm sorry, you will not succeed. Second, very important aspect is competence. You have to have the knowledge and the intelligence to be able to gauge the military situation and come up with a plan which your man has the full faith that it will succeed. इसके लिए आपको पढ़ाई करनी पड़ेगी. You will have to read military history. You will have to see what succeeds, what fails in various situations. You will have to learn from various places, books, movies, and experience of other people. It's always better to learn from somebody else's experience. So, because a mistake made by a military commander, an army officer, you know what does it result in? It results in death of your own people. The mistake of a military commander comes home in body bags. I think some people were raising hands. I'm sorry, I'm not able to see the screen and people. If somebody wants to say something, you may unmute yourself and you may interrupt me. There's no problem. So your competence, your knowledge as a military commander is very, very important. Third is physical courage, which comes from your physical fitness. When a young officer joins his unit, his jawan, the first thing he wants to test is कि साथ में कितना दम है, साहब मेरे साथ दौड़ सकता है कि नहीं, and you have to prove to them that you are better than them. That is why we army officers in NDA and IMA, we go through such grueling training, and that's what we at times try to give it to you people also in the NCC. Because as they say that a healthy mind exists only in a healthy body. So our physical fitness, from which will flow the physical courage, is important. I will tell you a personal story regarding this. You may be the youngest as the officer, but because you are the leader, you are expected to take the initiative, take the lead. I was posted in Kargil and I was sitting on top of a mountain at around 3,000-4,000 meters, about 13,000-14,000 feet high. And I was required to go to another post which was at the lower height, but it was directly under the observation of the enemy post. So we could move only at night. So I took one JCO and 5 other ranks from the unit along with which I was deployed as RTOP officer. That was one Sikh Light Regiment JCO and Jawan. They came along with me and we moved down at night in total pitch darkness. We were not able to see the way. And somewhere while reaching, we were about to reach the post, we realized that perhaps we have crossed the line of control and entered Pakistan or Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Now you put yourself in our shoes. It's pitch dark. All of us have got weapons in our hands, fully loaded. And we are thinking that we are in Pakistan. And we could see about 100 yards ahead of us, there was a dim light, a diya kind of thing, which we could see. And we are thinking that it is enemy post. Now all the men, they sat down, taking shelter behind rocks. But myself as a captain or military leader over there, I could not show fear, even though I was shit scared. So I took the courage, I got up and I told the JCO, you and I don't have a choice. We have to go and confirm with whether it is Pakistan or we are still in India. That was the question. And both of us moved up. Thankfully, I could hear my coursemate's voice coming from the other side, so I could recognize that it was our post and the fear melted away. But the example is just to show that you have to take the courage if you are afraid, your men will be afraid 10 times more than you. Even if you are afraid, you cannot show it. And as Monik Shaw used to say, that he is not afraid is either a fool or a Gurkha. He is either lying or he is a Gurkha. There's a famous saying that Gurkhas are not afraid, but rest everybody is afraid. Even I am afraid. But we have to get over our fear to understand what is more important and then take courage to move up. Moral courage. Moral courage is the ability to take a stand for what you think is right. Again, I will give example from the life of Field Marshal Manek Shaw. You may not be knowing, or some of you may be aware that he had told in the month of April 1971 that he was not ready to go for war when she wanted him to. There was a cabinet meeting which had been conducted in April 1971 when, because of the East Pakistani army's oppression, India started getting a lot of inflow of refugees. And the chief ministers of West Bengal, chief ministers of Assam, and all the neighboring states, they started complaining to the prime minister that we are not able to handle this large influx of refugees into our states. And that in that cabinet meeting, the prime minister told the chief of army staff, General Manik Shaw, that Sam, I want you to do something. He said, what do you want me to do? She said, you need to enter East Pakistan. He said, you know, that it means war. She said, I don't care if it means war. Then when can you go? He said, this is the month of April. My troops are all deployed here and there for election duties, for these duties, that duties. I will take at least 1 or 2 months to collect all of them to go in for an attack. And by the time I'm able to collect them, it will be monsoon. And when it rains in this part of the country, that is East India, then it pours. And all the rivers will swell up and become like oceans. All the tanks will get confined to the roads. All the fields of paddy, which has got a lot of waterlogging, the tanks will not be able to move. And if we move, then I can assure you that we will lose. The prime minister was very, very angry, but she was smart to listen to an intelligent army chief. And she asked him, where you go? He said, you don't interfere with me. Give me some time and I will tell you. I will go back, do my homework, and I'll tell you. And what happened later on, all of us know. We went into attack in Pakistan on 3rd of December 1971, and we finished the war in 13 days. On 16th of December 1971, India had made Pakistan sign the instrument of surrender. General A.A.K. Niazi of Pakistan Army had the instrument of surrender in front of General Jagjit Singh Arora. There's a famous picture where the signature is being done. And last but not the least is compassion. I have found that Army is the most caring organization. As an Army officer, I was taught in my younger days that every man is my responsibility. I have to know him. I have to know about his family. I have to know what is troubling him. If there is a marital discord going on in his family, I must know because it affects his performance for the because somebody has taken away his property, then I should know that also, and I should be able to help him to whatever extent I can. And I again come back to this picture, which I had showed you initially. These three maroon cap and pagdi gentlemen are three commanding officers of Lance Naik Sandeep Singh. They had all gone to his village for his funeral. It is understandable that the current commanding officer goes, but imagine another commanding officer who had perhaps commanded the same unit maybe 2 years, 4 years ago, who was posted somewhere else. He also took leave and he went to his village to show that every man is so important to us. And this act for Lance Naik Sandeep Singh is not only for Lance Naik Sandeep Singh. This also gives a message to other Jawans who are still alive that if something happens to me, my officers, my military leaders will take care of my family even if I'm not there. So he will not be scared to put his life on the line of fire whenever he is required to. Next time. Leadership versus management. Everybody asks what is the difference between leadership and management? Or is there any difference or it's the same thing? Well, there is a slight difference between the two. If you on the slide, you can see I have written doing the right thing is leadership and doing things right is management. And to my mind, both are complementary to each other. Leadership cannot succeed without good management, and a good management is useless without leadership which is right. Even Hitler was a very good leader. If you see, if we restrict the definition of leadership to get motivated following, he was successful in motivating his entire country to kill the Jews. He was a very successful leader. He had tremendous leadership qualities. But what was wrong is that his purpose was wrong. His purpose was divisive. His purpose was hatred. Whereas Gandhi, his purpose was noble. His purpose was freedom of people of a nation against occupation by another country. And Gandhi also mobilized his entire nation by simple theories of non-violence. So leadership tells you what is to be achieved. And management tells you how it should be achieved. So the aim, purpose, goal, vision, mission is the leadership task. And the execution part as to how, what resources, what military, how many manpower, what weapon, what gun, what machine will be required, and how to get it, where to get it from, will be decided by the management. With that, I come to some examples of my personal experience, which I want to share with you as to what I understand of leadership. And with my experience of leading men in difficult situations, I can tell you that a leader's eyes can do more work than his hands. So a leader must keep himself largely free to be able to doing the thinking part. When you are the head of an organization, Dr. Rama, your principal, will know, she will find that she is the only one who is thinking ahead in the entire college. So it's the leadership role to have a vision as to where that leader wants the organization or the institution or the company to reach. That is a leadership task. And to be able to do that, you should be comparatively free. So you should not do anything. I was told when I became the CEO of a unit that you should not do anything in your unit which anybody else can do. You should delegate. Delegation is a leadership task. Effective delegation is a leadership task. You cannot do everything yourself. There are so many people, you have to trust their intelligence, you have to trust their abilities, and be there just as a guide. After having given them the task, be there to help them. There's a concept called servant leader. You give the task and then be around. Whenever that person is getting stuck, you help him out. With that, I come to the next point, that is vision. What is vision? Yes. Anybody? What do you understand by this term vision?
Sir, how we look at a particular problem.
Vision is the ability to imagine the future, what we want. It's not there as of now, but we have to be able to see what is possible. Vision is the ability to see the possible future and then take the organization or the institution or the military unit to that point. So whatever is not there right now, I have a vision that I will be able to capture POK. That can be a leadership vision at the national level. As a company, I can have a vision that I will become the largest seller of Gillette blades if I am the CEO of Gillette. I can have a vision that I will be able to transform this village into a model village if I become a social sector leader. So these are visions. So this is a vision. Having a vision is a leadership task. Rest everybody will start following your vision. And from vision flows the mission. Vision is long-term perspective. Mission is short-term steps to achieve that long-term vision. So mission will be maybe time specific. Mission will be that 3JART will capture 0.8862 by 0400 hours tomorrow morning. That is a mission. And the vision may be that we will be capturing this entire POK area. So these are small missions which will contribute to the achievement of the larger vision. These are the things which nobody else will do in your organization. So you have to think ahead. You have to have a vision to see what is possible and then take your organization there. And next comes communication. You may be having an excellent vision. You may be able to formulate a very good mission statement. But unless you are able to communicate that vision and mission to your people who have to actually work on it, such that it becomes their own vision and mission, you will not succeed. So you should be able to imagine what you want. You should be able to divide it into small missions and then communicate that mission to the people who have to perform so that it becomes, they believe in it, that it's their own mission. And then comes the management part, the execution. Once you have delegated this task, you have to be giving the delegation very, very clearly that Alpha company will do this, Bravo company will do this, Charlie will go there, Delta will go there. And so will be in reserve. With my experience, I found that the human resource is one of the most important resource that we have as leaders. So if human resource, why do I say human resource is the most important resource? Is because this is the only resource which has got infinite potential. If there is a motivated human resource, it will perform much beyond your expectations. However, any machine will have its own limitation. An SLR will fire only up to 300 meters. LMG will fire only up to 500 meters. But if there is a human being, he can do anything with that 300 meters and 500 meters if he puts his mind and thinking to it. So we need to spend a lot of time optimizing the potential of our human resource in all country. But because the people of Israel were very, very motivated and they wanted to win, they were able to fight 7 countries around them at one point of time and still win. So a few things which I used to follow in dealing with human beings was catch them doing right. Many people spend a lot of time catching people doing wrong. Tune ye gadbad kiya, tune wo gadbad kiya. But you have to change that because everybody is doing something right. And we just accept it and we take that for granted. We do not appreciate it. We do not acknowledge it. We must acknowledge publicly and appreciate anything done good by the people that are working under us. Have an eye to catch people doing right more than catching people doing wrong. It's your task also as a leader to give a negative feedback. I'm not saying that if something is going wrong, you have to ignore it. There is a way to give a negative feedback. To give a negative feedback, it must be always done in private. It should never be done in public. You have to take that person aside and say that, son, I have so much trust in you. How could you do this wrong? he should feel that you are interested in that person. Even when you are giving a negative feedback, you do not give a negative feedback to a person publicly and not as to point out a mistake. He should get a feeling that you're trying to correct him. There are provisions of giving punishments also in the army. So my policy for punishment was that punishment has to be corrective, and punishment has to be exemplary, and punishment has to be assured. And it should be applied equally to everyone. You should not have favorites. If you're not fair in giving punishment, people will not respect you. The word Vaibhav had said, you will lose respect of your men. And in leadership, you do not have to tell everything to a person as to how to do leadership. You've got to tell what is to be achieved, and you have to give that person creative freedom to decide how it should be done. So focus on what more than how. Give the how part only as a discussion with that person, so that that person thinks that it is my way in which I am doing it. When his creativity, his own thinking faculty is involved, he will be more involved in the task, performance of the task, and he will take more ownership of that task. So a leadership, very important task of a leader is to develop another leaders. So that even if you're not there, that person can carry on. In the army, we have a very systematic planning process. Many of you must have heard the name of Captain Raghu Raman. Anybody seen his TED Talks? He's given a lot of TED Talks, which is applied in other sectors also, where he talks about the army's way of planning. He's given an acronym called Z-Kit Bag. Anyone knows about it? There's silence. Okay, Z-Kit Bag stands for Zamini Nishan. So whenever there is an order being given to a body of troops, the first thing the leader gives is the Zamini Nishan, that is the terrain where you're standing, and he gives the general line of direction where you're facing, so that everybody gets aligned to the task at hand and knows where they are and what is the terrain like in which they have to perform the task. Then comes ZK, K for Khabar. In Khabar, we cover Khabar Dushman ki and Khabar Apni. We give information about how many enemy troops are likely to be deployed there, what weapons are there, what is the kind of resistance we are likely to face, and what do we have to be able to tackle that. I is Irada. Irada is mission. And mission is always repeated twice whenever we are giving our orders. Mission is to capture point so and so by 0400 hours tomorrow morning. Irada सुने हमारा इरादा ये है कि हम point so and so को सवेरे 4 बजे तक capture कर लेंगे. And then it is somebody is asked to repeat back the mission. This is to ensure that to the last man, everyone is very, very clear as to what is the task to be performed. In case somebody, the leadership dies in the performance of the task, the next person must take over and finish the task, because task is more important, individuals are not. If we have time in the end, I'll tell you a story about 3 Jat. Remind me. And next is contingency planning. They say that you will plan for 4 contingencies, the enemy will take the 5th one. That just goes on to show that the battlefield situations are very, very dynamic and very, very unpredictable and risk driven. But still we will cater for all kinds of contingency. If this fails, if this happens, if this happens, we will do, if this happens, we will do this. That by and large sums up whatever leadership qualities and tasks that I wanted to communicate. I now want to give you some examples of from my own life. What is the kind of situation and I faced and how I dealt with it. This next slide is showing you a area somewhere in the Kupwara district on the line of control. If you can make out, you've done map reading, there are contour lines which are showing heights 3,000, 4,000 feet, and these are the peaks where I needed to climb. And this is the point on the bottom of the slide where we had to start our move from. My gun position was there, Patra gun position in Keren sector of Kashmir. In normal times, we used to take just 3 to 4 hours to reach a point over here called Khwaja Bahek. But when I undertook this mission, it was winters and it had snowed all over. This complete area had snow. At 7 in the evening, I got orders that I need to move up with my OP party to this point, Khwaja Bahek, and carry out firing on enemy morning 5 o'clock. So there was no choice, but we had to move at night. And when we were moving, we had to carry a radio set which had 20 kgs of weight with the secrecy device. And my man who was carrying the radio set, he was quite heavy. And you see, this is a very, very steep climb. By the time we reached the first hillock, it was already 1 o'clock at night. And our movement was very, very slow. We had started moving at 7 in the evening. And thereafter, this climb and this ridge, when we reached this ridge, we started facing blizzard. The snow was flying into our eyes and we could not see anything more than 10 feet ahead of us. But we still kept moving, and we reached this knoll kind of a thing. It was a post where our BSF Jawans were deployed. By the time we reached there, it was already 3 o'clock in the morning. And I forgot to tell you that when we had reached this first point, a message had come that the firing next day has been cancelled. But there was no way that we could go back, so we decided to move ahead. Not cancelled, it was postponed to the next day. So when I reached here, one of my Jawans who was moving with me, he showed me that his glove, one of the fingers of the glove was torn. And it was exposed throughout the night to extreme cold conditions, and it had become swollen red. By chance, on this post, BSF post, there was another Jawan who was having heart problem, and there was a helicopter which was coming to pick him up and take him to the hospital. I had no time to think. The helicopter was already there. I just requested the pilot and I put my Jawan who was with me in this helicopter and sent him to the hospital. All of you know that there are a lot of protocols that we need to follow if a person has to be evacuated. And I needed to take permission from my CO, and my CO had to take permission from the brigade commander who would have informed the GOC and all that. Was supposed to be happening. But the situation was such that if I had delayed this decision, that man would have had to lose his finger. So I did not care for anything, and I took the decision to take this panga, and I put him in the helicopter and sent him back. So these are such decisions that you have to take against all norms to be able to save someone's life. Later on, I was given a displeasure because I had not taken permission to send him back, but I did not care. And I took that displeasure also in my stride because that was the requirement of the moment. Somebody had told me that officers in the army are paid to do two things. One is to take decision in time, and second is to break rules if required. So I had broken a rule on this day, and I felt happy about it. Another example I would like to give you from my life is of a boxing scenario when my unit was participating in inter-unit boxing championship, and there was one boy of mine who was doing very well. He had won his bout and he had reached the semi-finals. And based on his points, our unit would have won lots of this thing, some trophy or something. But one day in the afternoon, when I was leaving office, I saw him standing in the adjutant's office and he was crying. I went there and tried to find out what was wrong. Then I was told that this boy's sister's marriage was there on 26th of that month. And that day it was, I think, 21st or 22nd of that month. And he had a bout to fight in, I think, the next day or next to next day. So he was saying that he needs to go for his marriage, and the adjutant was saying that you should fight this bout and then go, otherwise the unit will lose and we will not get the trophy. So I've written on the heading of the slide as transfer responsibility. You have to trust your men. They are also very, very responsible people. So I took the boy outside and I asked him, let's see, if you want to go, you go. I will not stop you. It's your sister's marriage. If it was my sister's marriage, even I would have perhaps done what you are doing. But decision is yours. If you choose to stay back and fight the bout the next day, then I will give you a flight ticket to reach your home in time for your sister's marriage. And I left him and I went home. And I was told that the boy decided to stay back and he fought the bout. And he came to me in the office and he said, I don't need the flight ticket. I can still reach before that time, even if I go by train. But I, on my part, sent some gifts for his sister, for his sister's marriage. So this example is just to show that you have to trust your people. You don't have to order around always. They are all very creative. This is how I transferred leadership to that person. And he took the initiative and he said that I will not go. So with that, I have generally come to the end of my talk, whatever I had to tell you. Just to recap, whether to see what we had set out to cover, have we covered or not. Role of armed forces, I told you. And the purpose of NCC, I believe, is to be able to transfer some of the work ethics and work culture of the army, of the leadership, kind of leadership that we have, which does not fail against all odds in pressure, stressful situations, to the young and youth of this country who are the future leaders of our nation. I covered the special military situations in which the military leadership needs to be effective. And the unique requirement of military leadership is to ask his man to be able to give his life if required for his country. And then we covered the skills and qualities to meet that requirement of this thing. As I told you, integrity is very important. Your man wants to see you as a very competent person whom he can trust. He wants to see you as a person of physical courage who will not let him down. He wants to see you as a person who will take a stand with his moral courage. And he wants to feel a part of you. And we in the army say that we are a family throughout. Even today, I left my unit in 2009. Even today, I get calls from my men whom I commanded 10, 15 years. Just to tell you that after retirement, I am making a visit to my unit, which is presently deployed in the base camp of Siachen, just to pay my homage and convey my gratitude to the people who used to perform their tasks on my orders. Thank you. Jai Hind. If anyone has any questions, I would like to take them on.
Jai Hind, sir. Thank you so much for such an insightful talk, especially the parts like about deterrence and the qualities and dynamics of leadership skills and the tasks of a leader, and also the personal experiences that you shared definitely gave us hair-raising curves. Thank you so much. And I don't think we could have found a better person to explain about the military leadership skills than you. Thank you very much for being present here today, sir. Now I request our ANO ma'am to give her closing remarks. Thank you.
Before giving my closing remarks, I want cadets, if you have any query or if you want to ask anything related to NCC or like joining army later on, you can ask. Don't hesitate.
Hey, sir. This is Ronak, and you told something in between that you'll tell in the end, and we must he must tell you that you were saying something. Actually, the voice was breaking. You you said something that you'll tell in the end.
Yeah, three jars. I remember the three jar story.
Yes, sir.
I said I will tell you the story of three jars. See, three jars was a battalion which was tasked to capture a place called Dograi, and their commanding officer was an Anglo-Indian. I just wanted to give this example where he very smartly communicated to his people that the mission was more important than individual. And Jats have a very, very rough kind of way of speaking, and officers, we are expected to learn their language and speak to them in their lingo. So this Anglo-Indian officer, I'm forgetting his name, he before the attack, when he gave his orders, after that he said that, asked his Jats ki re susro, that is the way these people talk. आज की रात थ्री जाट कहाँ होगी? So the Jawans, they very in loud voice they replied back, Dograi, Dograi. Dograi was the place they had to capture. And then he asked कि अगर रास्ते में सीओ साहब ने गोली लाग गई तो क्या करोगे? तो जाट जेसीओ he says promptly that तो सीओ साहब ने कंधे पे उठा के ले जाएंगे लेकिन रुकेंगे डोगरई जाकर. This example is just to tell you that the leader was able to communicate to his men that I am not important. Any human being is not important. It's the mission which is more important. That is the story I wanted to share. Thank you for reminding. Ronak.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Sir, one of my colleague, Dr. Shampa Bhattacharya, wants to ask a question.
Yes.
Shampa ma'am.
Good morning, sir. I'm Shampa Bhattacharya from Chemistry Department. Sir, I have a question to you. So, border security force is there to prevent illegal immigration. So, what is their role there? Sometimes when we go to the border, they say they are not doing their duties properly. So, as a result, this infiltration takes place. So my question to you, so is it correct?
If I got your question correctly, you asked that border security force is supposed to be deployed for checking infiltration and smuggling on the borders in peacetime. Is that right? And your question is that they at times fail and they are not performing their duties properly. Ma'am, I will not be able to comment on that. That's a very different organization. And we do not know the functioning of the BSF, though we work together when we are deployed in the line of control situation, because it's not a border. On the international boundary, there is a difference between international boundary and the line of control between two countries. International boundary is supposed to be manned and guarded by the BSF during peacetime, and army stays behind. Once the war will break out, then army will come forward. The BSF will help us to take up our positions. And in peacetime, they have their own respective role. I'm sure they are performing their tasks to the best of their abilities. There will always be some or the other dark horse somewhere, and you may have heard of something going wrong somewhere, but we cannot make that as a general statement that they are not performing their tasks and they are not doing their duties. They are a very, very professional.
They may be professional, sir. As you mentioned, one should be honest. Isn't it? It is the first quality of a person that one should be honest who are there in this post. But they take money. That's why in the eastern West Bengal, Tripura, why there are so many persons coming from Bangladesh. And as a result, who are citizens of India, they are being deployed and the demography is getting changed. Of all the border states.
Yeah.
I can feel.
We cannot.
I'm from West Bengal. I can feel when I go to my home state, the demography has been changed. It doesn't take place in one day. It takes place over the year.
Yeah.
It can be for some period. Yes, they couldn't function properly, but it is over the period, irrespective of any political party, whatever may be. So what I'm saying, so it is very, very depressing scenario. Just I'm sharing my views. I found it. So if you go to these border areas, you will find it how people are getting infiltrated, and without their help, they cannot.
Yes. Thank you so much, ma'am, for bringing this out. But I think I am not the person qualified to comment on this.
It's okay. It's okay. But I'm just sharing. Thank you, sir. But you spoke so nicely. What should be the quality? And so many things I got from you. And when you are discussing about that Bangladesh war, that time I was in class 4 or 5. So those pictures of Manek Shah, General Arora, and when they declared the war, that time Indira Gandhi went to West Bengal for election campaign, and that is most probably in Midnapur, and that time it has been announced the war should be, and that the blackout, so we gone through that stage. So when you are saying that, I could visualize that picture.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing. Thank you.
It's a wonderful talk, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Jyoti, I have the questions.
Dr. Rakhi, yes. Sir, Dr. Rakhi is here. She wants to ask something.
No, there is no question in specific. Yep. It's always been a pleasure to listen to sir. Sir, once again, I'd like to thank you because I am highly indebted to you for what you have initiated in our college by starting NCC. Let me just make the entire audience know the fact that in the history of St. Stephen's College, it is Colonel Somendra Pandey who actually had backed me up completely to start up NCC. And in 3 years, I think what we have done as an institution has actually proved that any other institution can get up to the level of what NCC expects of the citizens of India. So I feel it was truly a splendid presentation.
You so much.
In addition to what Champa ma'am has already mentioned, I would like to just add on that I really found the presentation a splendid one, which exposed the students to basically the field practices, because these days, while staying at home by having everything online, they hardly get to know the ground realities. At least, that kind of a feel, I don't think comes when you're sitting at such distances and trying to imbibe what you could have done otherwise in the offline sessions. And the efforts that sir you inculcate, the efforts to inculcate discipline and a will to develop with a positive mindset in your audience, I found them truly phenomenal. You made us aware of the different opportunities for individuals, not only for the audience today, but for individuals like me and the younger lot to grow in life. The way you encourage critical, innovative, and creative thinking in youth for self-sustainable development, I found it really awesome. And I always get introduced to new things whenever I converse with you. And today, yet again, that Z Kit Bag was something which is something that we all need to deliver to our students also, while trying to make them grow as a persona, grow in personality, in totality. So I'm really thankful to you, sir. Yet again, I couldn't stop myself, in losing out on this opportunity to just interact with you on this platform. Thank you so much, Dr. Jyoti, for arranging this talk, and thank you so much, sir, for such a mesmerizing talk. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I must tell you that I'm so proud of what St. Stephen's has achieved. I must also tell you that I'm following you on Instagram. So I keep seeing what's happening in St. Stephen's College, NCC. And when you said that about Z Kit Bag, I realized that I did not complete the acronym description. I finished at ZKI, Irada. The rest of the thing is KIT, K-I-T. T is Tariqa. Tariqa means execution. What should be the method of going in for attack or defense, whatever. And B is Bandobast. That is what all, where will be the ammunition, where will be the reserve area, etc. A is administration. And last but the most important part is G. Can anybody guess what is G? G is Ghadiya Milao. That is synchronize your watches. It's very, very important for all of us to be having a synchronized watch when we are performing our task, because activity of one element will be dependent on the activity of another element, and both must be in sync with each other for time. If I have to give an example, if artillery is firing and infantry has to go in for attack, there is a particular time before which the artillery should lift its fire so that the infantry can close in and we do not end up killing our own people. That is why it's so very important that we synchronize our watches. That is always done before we break off our people. Synchronize your watch. Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind words.
Thanks. The moment you talked of the Z-Kit bag, I started Googling it up to check up what's new in that. I really liked it. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shampa and Dr. Rakhi, for appreciating the talk. And yes, if I talk about my college, NCC Hansraj, so I would like to give credits to more people, because it was Dr. Arvind. It was his vision that we should start with the senior wing in our college, because we had SD for a very long time. Then our former principal, Dr. Kuatra, our current principal, Professor Rama, and the most important person in actually establishing our NCC. Like, sir, we have completed 4 years officially this year and 5 years unofficially because of the paperwork. It got delayed. So it was you who always motivated us, motivated me, that I'll be able to look after it perfectly. And most importantly, sir, our cadets who have given wholeheartedly their mind, body and soul to NCC Hansraj, that people now appreciate that NCC of Hansraj College is really doing great. And I give this credit to my cadets, sir, because I just give them a simple instructions, and the way they come up with the whole presentation, whole whatever the task which is given to them, they are doing wonderfully in that. So thank you, sir, for taking out time from your busy schedule. And because I know cadets always love interacting with army people, because the kind of imagination you make them people to imagine during the talk now, I think I as an ANO won't be able to reach to that level. So the purpose of keeping this talk so that they remain motivated, because in the online interactions, we don't have that much of training which we usually give in our college, and they go and experience that in the camps which we attend. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, cadets, for making yourself available for this time. Thank you, Dr.
Excuse me, ma'am, I have just a last question.
In guiding me, whatever task we take up for our NCC Hansraj. Thank you, sir.
Somebody wants to ask a question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think Ritika Dhawan.
Yes, ma'am. Jai Hind, sir.
Jai Hind.
Sir, I have seen your whole program, so I want to ask a question. Sir,
Yes, yes.
as I have seen the whole program, so I want to ask that is the NCC program part of the educational activity, or is it a part of a military activity?
Very good question. Your name is Ritika Dhawan.
Yes, sir.
Ritika has asked whether NCC is part of educational curriculum or it's part of military education.
Yes, sir.
I hope you people are aware that there is a effort going on right now to include NCC as an elective subject in the college curriculum. And there is in every state, I was posted in Bihar, there is a lot of emphasis being given, and many universities have already started giving NCC as an elective subject, as one of the elective subjects with points in your grading system. So very soon we will be seeing NCC being available to you as an elective subject as such. However, the task will remain unfinished till the time it gets also included as part of competitive exams to various jobs. So I think next step should be that first we get it included as a subject in the curriculum of the universities, and then we take it further to included as one of the subjects. Only then we start benefiting by taking NCC as a subject in the universities. As of now, it remains as a leadership development activity, as an allied activity to main educational curriculum of your college and university, unless it has been accepted already. Have I answered your question, Ritika? Ritika, you're mute.
Ji sir, ji sir.
Thank you.
Okay sir, thank you sir for clearing my doubt.
Thank you so much for asking.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Arvind. Thank you, Jyoti ma'am. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to cadets. I always found that it was very inspiring to learn from cadets. They bring in more enthusiasm into us. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Pradyuman?
Yes, ma'am.
You can end the meeting, Pradyuman. Thank you, cadets.
Okay.
Arvind, sir? एक second, Pradyuman. Arvind, sir? Okay, you can end the meeting, Pradyuman.